Rob, we are live, so I'm gonna let people in right at the top of the hour.
Wonderful. Excited to chat with people about this one. I think this is one of our most requested trainings.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think it's going to be a good one. I hope. Are we we're going to run through everything and then do questions at the end, right? Or are you going to be like looking in the chat for questions? How do you want
I'm
to
going to
have
be
it?
looking at the chat for questions. We'll kind of pepper them throughout, and then we'll hold up to 15 minutes at the end for questions. But I'll pull out of the chat if I can find a way to work it in organically, and I'll remind people that they can, if I for whatever reason skip over any, that they'll be able to drop them in the chat at the end. Great.
And go.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. Excited to be getting into another training. I'm going to give people a minute to get settled. We'll ask that everyone, you should automatically be muted when you join the call. We'll ask you to stay on mute throughout the call. You can communicate with us throughout the call using the chat box. Feel free to ask questions at any point during this training. I will try to weave them in where I can to help prompt some of the discussion, but we will also hold 15 minutes at the end for open Q&A. And if for whatever reason I miss one in the chat, that's the best time to drop it back in there. And I'll try to make sure that we cover all of the questions. I'm really excited for this week's training. I think it's one of the most requested trainings coming out of the Discord community. And the topic is the secrets to successful campaign fundraising and budgeting. So today we're going to cover the basics of fundraising. We're going to cover budgeting best practices. We're going to cover how to get started, how to plan an ask, how to make an ask, and then we're going to go over some of the tools and resources that are available for financial management. And really, the goal of this training is to equip especially first-time candidates, but all independent candidates with the knowledge and tools that they need to be able to raise funds and actively, successfully manage your campaign budgets. So without further ado, I will go ahead and introduce today's expert. We are joined for the first time, I think, back-to-back weeks by an expert. People responded really well to the training that Alex did last week. But Alex Barrio is a member of Good Party's political analyst team. Alex, go ahead and introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your work and why you're an expert on fundraising.
Thank you, Rob. And hey, everybody, thanks for joining us. Again, I'm Alex Barrio. I'm a political associate here at goodparty.org. I previously ran for office twice. But beyond that, I've had a long political career. I got involved in politics in college. And I was a canvasser. Then I worked on some state house races. That was where I started. I learned a lot about grassroots fundraising. I worked for a candidate in particular who was actually a Democratic primary challenger to an incumbent. And we were successful in '06, and that was a purely grassroots driven campaign. And I learned a lot about grassroots fundraising, worked on numerous campaigns after that. And then ultimately in 2016, ran for state house myself. In that race, I was able to raise around $40,000 from 160 different individual donors. I was unsuccessful, unfortunately, but I tried again in 2020, ran an even better campaign, raised almost $60,000 from over 200 individual donors. But again, unfortunately, fell short. That was in a 5-way race. That was first past the post. It was a mess. And it was also COVID 2020. So after that, I decided to just move forward and get more involved on the other side of politics, sort of return to tradition in a way, and work on this side, helping candidates get elected, getting to office. And so I'm really excited to share the insights I had from my experience and the experiences that I've had working with candidates at every level, local, state, and federal.
Awesome. Well, let's dive right in. And as a reminder, in case anyone missed it at the top of the call, you can ask questions in the chat at any point, and I'll try to weave them in where appropriate. And we are going to hold out Q&A time at the end of the call as well. But let's get right into it, Alex, and talk about the basics of fundraising. To you, what are some of the initial steps a candidate needs to take before they even start fundraising?
So I want to share a PowerPoint. Can everyone see that?
Yep, you might want to put it in presentation mode to make sure that it fills the screen.
Yep.
There we go. All right. So I find this this will be helpful for me for notes and also for everybody if you want to write anything down, though of course this is recorded. You can always go back to it. But beginning, broadly, there are certain milestones and achievements that you want to do in campaign fundraising, certain outcomes you're looking for, an analysis of your own strategy, and then projections. But before you do anything, before you begin fundraising at all, the important things are filing your candidacy with the election office, obviously, making sure they have all your paperwork, your petitions. Try to do it early on the first day. In Florida, I ran in Florida and you had 5 days of qualifying. It was a Monday through Friday. I would always try to qualify on Monday in case there were any issues. I could address those on Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever. That's number one. Number two, create a donation website with a working donor link. And we'll get a little bit further into actually the process of accepting donations through different vendors and CRMs. But you want to create a donation website that has a working donation link that you test yourself. Donate $1 to yourself and make sure that it works. It's really, really crucial because when you launch your campaign, you want to be able to send that as quickly as possible to as many people as you can. And you want that website to go live immediately when you file. And be aware and be mindful that until you are a filed candidate, you can't raise money. So make sure that that's not out there until you are a formally filed candidate, just for legal purposes. Make sure those donations linked to a bank account created specifically for this purpose. Go to your bank, whatever bank you use that you're comfortable with. For me, and you're going to see this throughout, especially as a first-time candidate, simplicity is the most important thing. So if you already have a bank, even if they're not a perfect bank, but you're familiar with their system, you have a banker that you like working with, work with them to create the bank account, make sure it's linked to your payment provider, that is linked to your website, and test it as well. Donate the $1 to the provider and then transfer that $1 into your bank account. And then most importantly, train on your donation reporting database. Your local elections office, your state secretary of state should be able to provide training with you and work with you to make sure that you are aware of all the deadlines and the actual process of reporting your donations. Most states will fine you if you report late or report donations incorrectly. And so you want to make sure that you know how to report your donations and your expenditures, everything. Just dot those T's, cross those I's. And if you can, bring someone with you who can also do that training, also knows how to do it. If it's not your finance director, campaign manager, someone who can take care of that so that you don't have to worry about that at all.
So, Alex, we have a question in the chat here from Monique Bryant. And the question is, can you accept donations through Cash App or Zelle in a local campaign? And it also tees up sort of a question that I wanted to ask, which is, how important or why is it important to have a dedicated campaign bank account? And what are some of the many ways that you can link donations to a dedicated campaign account?
So, to address that question first, it's really important to have a dedicated campaign account because it is illegal, and we'll get into some other things that are illegal in campaign fundraising, just so we're aware of it. It is illegal to commingle campaign funds with any other funds, with personal funds, with business funds. That is illegal across the board at every level. So just having a dedicated account is crucial for that reason, number one. Number two, it is also crucial to keep track of your spending. Knowing that that money is only for campaign purposes is really crucial as you're budgeting. So you know where your budget is. That money is in one place, and you don't have to worry about any sort of confusion of other money mixing in, and you're not sure which money goes where, which money came from. It's just an just organizationally so important. And then going to Monique's question, that is a question in a local candidacy, in a local race, that you would have to talk to your local jurisdiction, your county supervisor of elections, or the state. I'm most familiar with Florida, so I'll talk about Florida there. In Florida, it is illegal to receive more than $200 in cash as an individual donation. And I believe at one point it was $50 cash. Otherwise, it has to come through a check or through some sort of credit card, right? Visa, MasterCard, or a debit card, some sort of electronic transfer. Cash App and Zelle may count as an electronic transfer, like a credit card or a debit card, but Cash App, I believe, is legally considered cash. So it's important to reach out to confirm, are there limits to cash donations specifically, and do those count as cash donations, or are they traditional contributions, which would fall under the traditional limit, which in Florida is $1,000. So yeah, I'm not familiar with, I believe, Monique, you're running in Detroit, with that specific jurisdiction, but definitely call, and they will be helpful. They will ask your questions. Like, don't be shy, reach out.
Yeah, so that underscores a really good line of questioning, which is when you have questions about sort of compliance issues and ethical issues, where are some of the local or state agencies that you can reach out to get your questions answered?
Yeah, your county supervisor of elections or your secretary of state, wherever you are filing your paperwork. The people that are collecting your paperwork to be filed are the ones that are also managing your donation reporting database, and they are the ones that have dedicated staff who will work with you to answer these questions. And most of the questions, honestly, have very, very simple answers. Like, Monique, your question that can probably be resolved in 1 minute, phone call to the county. And so just feel free to reach out, build relationships with those folks, especially if you're someone that is elected to like a local position where you're gonna have to be running every 2 years. Building relationships with the folks there is really, really crucial. It's really helpful beyond fundraising. You'll know if you have good relationships with them, you'll know about your early voting dates. You'll know if there are any issues with mail-in ballots. If you have questions about voting locations, there are dedicated staff there that will be there for you. So just wherever you file your paperwork, find out who you can come. Just ask them, who can I talk to with about these specific issues? They will give you that person. That person's there to help. There are dedicated staff who are there to answer your questions.
So Alonzo asks, should I hire an accountant? And this feels like a good segue to talk about the importance of a campaign having a treasurer and sort of what the treasurer does. So can you speak a little bit about that really important role?
So the treasurer is the person that is going to be keeping track of all your donations, right? And making sure that those donations and all your expenditures are properly reported. And so, it can be your campaign manager. In some races, if your race is small enough, it's just going to be you as the candidate. But the treasurer is the one who makes sure what money's coming in, who's it coming from, and is it being reported legally and properly? Are all the deadlines being met? An accountant is an expense that, in my experience, and depending on your race and your own comfort with these sorts of, with finances, you might have a different opinion. But in my opinion, it is only necessary when you are hiring staff and paying out multiple staff, because you want somebody who will take care of the 1099s and your tax paperwork. If it is just you and you're running a pure volunteer campaign and you have a volunteer or you yourself are doing the donation reporting, you do not need an accountant. An accountant is there for tax purposes. If you're hiring a campaign manager and multiple canvassers, you're paying staff, especially people are earning more than $600. $600 is the maximum allowed payment before you have to report it to the IRS. So if you're paying $599 or less, you don't have to report that to the IRS. But $600 or more, if you're paying people more than that, then it is important to have an accountant. Now, depending on the size of your campaign, you may not need a full-time accountant. You can just hire a CPA after the election to take care of all your paperwork at the end, with regards to the IRS at the end of the year. But if you're not paying out multiple people or if you don't really have experience and you are paying out people, an accountant can be optional, but I would recommend at least talking to a CPA for sure. Make an appointment, reach out to a CPA if you have these questions where you are paying anybody on your campaign more than $600.
Excellent. So I'd love for you to talk. We've kind of talked about money coming in and sort of managing money coming in on from the most basic standpoints. But what are some of the permissible campaign expenditures? What can you spend money on as a candidate?
So for the most part, everything you can spend money on anything directly related to the campaign that you can explain is related to the campaign. That is really the key. Campaign finance, rightly or wrongly, is pretty broad. You know, for the most part, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in detail when we get to the budgeting section of this conversation. But you want to set a priority, right? Of staff, your campaign manager, field organizers, etc., flyers and mailers. It's really important to have something physical with your name on it that says who you are that you can hand out to people at parades, at events, at the doors. You, of course, need to pay for your website hosting. You know, that's where the money is going to be coming in. So you want to make sure you take care of that. Data, you know, Good Party's here to help you with your voter data, but any other data that you need. Events, if you host fundraisers, right? The money can be used to pay for food. And broadly, anything related to the campaign. And you can look at campaign expenditure reports. You know, all this is public, and you can see that people have spent money on meals. You know, these meals have to be directly related to the campaign. Usually it's a fundraising meeting or a meal with staff, food for a planning event, you know, for planning an event, etc. Some members of Congress will use money for car rentals or leases. They'll actually lease a vehicle for the duration of the campaign. These are campaigns that have, you know, $1 million budgets. So I definitely would put that at the bottom of priorities. Because if you do have a campaign that raises $50,000 and 40,000 of that goes towards a vehicle lease and gas, it's going to raise red flags. There's going to be a real question as to whether or not this is directly related to the campaign. But when you're running for Congress, especially in a large rural district, the FEC is a little bit more flexible because they understand you're driving, you're in your car for hours, driving from event to event. Hotels, conferences, etc. When you're going out there to different events, to, like, you know, let's say you're with a forward party is having a conference and you want to use your campaign money to go to that would usually be allowed. So things like that, you know, Democrats and Republicans, you know, they're all going to RNCs next week. The DNC is in August. You know, all those candidates are going to be expensing that as a campaign expenditure because it's also something that is related to their campaign, because they're going to argue, they're going to network with other donors, volunteers, etc. So my recommendation is always stick to the basics. What do I actually need to win this race? And it comes down to flyers and mailers, you know, yard signs as well, ads, website hosting, etc. But yeah, try to be frugal, be conservative as much as possible in this sense, you know, small c conservative. Because again, you don't want to get into legal trouble. And also you don't want to waste that money. You know, that money is given to you, and we'll talk about the ask later on, but it's given to you to help you win the election. So make sure, just from an ethical standpoint, that you're using it to help you win the election.
So we have a question about some self-funded expenses, and this is from a candidate who's running for mayor in Hawaii County in Hawaii. Do I have to report my own money spending for the campaign?
Absolutely. That is usually reported in two ways, either as a individual donation or as a loan. Um, if it is a loan, then the intention is that you will pay yourself back from campaign contributions. And that is legal. It is legal for you to loan your campaign $50,000 and then raise $50,000 and get that $50,000 back, right? After you have spent $50,000, right? Assuming the expenditure is equivalent to that loan, and then the money is being returned back, right? You can't claim, and we'll get this in the next slide, I believe, or in a couple slides. You can't claim that you gave yourself a $50,000 loan, but that money never went to the bank, raise $50,000 and give it back to you to repay a loan that actually never happened. So you do have to report it, because the key thing is they want to keep track not just of donations, not just the money coming in, but the money coming out. They, the law essentially wants to make sure that donors are not getting ripped off. And even if you're a self-funder, they want to know that you're not lying to the voters, right? That the voters are getting information from you as a candidate, and the voters know where that money is coming from. So either it's a loan or it can be a direct contribution. And as a direct contribution to your own campaign, you are reporting that it's not a loan, that you don't expect to get it back, and that you're using this money explicitly for your campaign. And it is tied to specific expenditures, right? So you give yourself, and with a loan as well, it should be tied to specific expenditures, but you're giving yourself this money because on your expenditure report, you bought all these yard signs, you bought all these mailers, you paid staff, etc. So yes.
So there's a good point being made in the chat here, and this comes from Joe in Washington State. The amount a candidate can loan their own campaign in return to themselves is $7,500 there. So there are state-specific restrictions to self-funding, and it's always important. Anytime that you hear Alex mention a number here, I would take that as sort of a hypothetical $50,000. And you should always check what the state and even municipal specific restrictions are, because there will also be different restrictions based on what type of office you're running for, by way of donation limits and restrictions. And this underscores again the importance. If you have something that you're unsure about, those state offices, if your state is lucky enough to have an ethics commission, if you always can go to your Secretary of State and the local election officials as well. So, and this tees up again a really good question. What are some examples of legal issues that a candidate can bump into when it comes to fundraising, and how can we avoid them? And here's the poster child for legal issues related to fundraising.
Absolutely. Everybody knows this individual, George Santos, former congressman from New York, had a very eventful year before resigning. I made 3 bullet points, but he's been charged with something like 21 different crimes related to campaign finance. But these are the big things, right? Number 1, fake loans. He said again, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, and at the federal level, there is no limit to how much money a candidate can loan themselves. So he claimed that he loaned himself $100,000 for the campaign and then paid himself back for that loan. However, that money never existed. Like that bank account where he had that $100,000 that he allegedly transferred to his campaign account, those actions never happened. The money did not exist. So that was one thing, right? And it was a way for him to steal money from donors, claiming there was a loan and then take donor money for himself personally. Illegal spending. There was, the list of lavish things, but the big thing was I think the thing that jumps out the most is the thousands of dollars on clothes. Clothes are a tricky subject because candidates have argued, and in some states, you do have some allowance to buy clothes, but you do have to dress professionally, right? As a candidate, especially at a federal level, he's arguing I need to be out there in suits, very nice suits. But when you're spending tens of thousands of dollars on brand name suits, Italian suits, tailors, etc., the argument that it is related to the campaign doesn't really fit. I believe there was also a fur coat that he bought. So just illegal spending that is very clearly not related to the campaign, but is really all about enriching himself. I think that's a really strong term to remember, self-enrichment. Are you using this money in any way to enrich yourself? After the campaign is over, is this money going to be used, or are the things you spent your campaign money on actually making you more more wealthy, more financially independent, et cetera? And then lying on the reports, all the stuff he lied about. He lied about donations. He would lie about the number of people that donated to him. He lied about specific amounts. There were certain rules related to if the donation was less than $250, and we'll talk about like specific donation criteria, right? Because normally you need to give name, address, employment, or whatever, but there was a threshold where if they donated below that amount, and I believe it was 250, but it might even be less, it might be $100, you wouldn't have to give the donors personal information. You just issue their name and the donation amount. Or you can even aggregate them as a cluster of donations from a single event. So he had a bunch, literally hundreds of donations. Let's say it's $50. I don't remember the exact number. I'm sorry. But so he had hundreds of donations that were $49.99. So a penny under that limit. Anything like that will trigger the enforcement authority, whether it's your Secretary of State, your Ethics Commission, your FEC, to look at why are all these donations coming in just under the amount of money needed to report full details. It raises a lot of suspicions. So he lied about donations, lied about loans, lied about his spending on his reports, which is a criminal act. And so and the sad thing is, like, he actually did end up raising hundreds of thousands of dollars. And he probably would have won 2022 in New York, very strong Republican year. Republicans swept a bunch of seats. He didn't have to commit all these crimes to win. But he did. He lied. And he got caught very, very quickly, which is, I think, a credit to our system. We do talk about how corrupt the system is a lot, but there's a certain level where you're so corrupt that you'll get caught pretty easily. But yeah, don't lie on your reports. Do not spend money illegally, and do not lie about loans. Those are just some of the things that you can get into serious legal trouble for, potentially.
So I want to queue up a couple more questions here from the chat. A really good one from Andre, and one that is a little near and dear to my heart. If you buy durable assets for a campaign, like say a printer, what happens to them when the campaign is over? And before Alex gives his answer, I'll say it's near and dear to me because for a period of time when I had my own consultancy that for the most part advised folks on field work, voter outreach. I also did operations consulting and had a number of laptops, printers, even office furniture that I would lease to candidates and to campaigns, knowing that purchasing those items outright didn't make sense for those campaigns. So being able to provide those things that then at the end they could return to me and get for cheaper than if they were purchasing them outright was a solution that I was happy to provide when I was in my consulting days. But Alex, when you buy up something like a printer for your campaign or a laptop for that matter, what can you do with it when the campaign is over?
So, pretty much when you buy it after the campaign is over, it is ultimately yours, depending on the result, right? So let's say you win, you're running for re-election. It is your campaign printer. It is your campaign computer. You can use it for personal use. And if there are any questions from the supervisor of elections or an ethics commission about it, like, have those receipts, right? Of like, I use this to print supplies, right? I used it to print walk lists. And I did purchase a printer when I ran with campaign funds because I needed it to print walk lists and phone lists. I mean, we were really old-fashioned in that way. And after the election, it is yours. And when you lose, it really ultimately you just have to prove you used it for the campaign, right? It was purchased specifically for the campaign, and it goes down to be discretionary, right? Do not buy a $2,000 Apple laptop a month before the election. That is going to raise red flags. I bought $100 printer that I used until it was wheezing its way because of its daily use for months at a time. And I bought a $200 laptop. Um, and so be frugal, be smart, because it's true. If you lose that equipment, there is no more campaign. It ultimately belongs to you as the candidate. Um, take care of it. You are, as a candidate, as someone receiving donations, a steward of this money that is intended to help you win the election. So always be mindful of that. Only buy things that you need to help you win. But that sorts of equipment, computers, printers, office equipment as well, do not spend lavishly. Because it will raise red flags. But yeah, buying an office chair and a desk for an office that you're renting for your campaign office, it's acceptable. They're just, the line is hard to parse through, but it's there and it's evident. And they will, even if it's not illegal, like it's technically not illegal to spend, $2,000 or $3,000 on a laptop a month before the election, but it's going to raise red flags, going to raise questions, and you're going to have to explain that to the Ethics Commission and potentially to an attorney and to your donors and supporters. Why did you do this? Especially if you lost. Just be smart about it. Be thoughtful.
Similar question. What happens when you have money in the bank left over?
So money in the bank left over. I don't know the specific rules because, again, it goes to different jurisdictions. There are federal rules. There are state rules in Florida, and other states probably have different rules. But in Florida at least, and at the federal level, I think it's similar. You basically have two options. Number one is a refund to donors. You can do proportional refunds, or you can just refund some donors and not others. You have a lot of discretion in terms of how you're refunding your donors. That's one. Second, you can give all that money to a 501c3 nonprofit. Those are essentially your two options. Be wary. There are Congress people who have given campaign donations to 501c3s that they were on the boards of and ended up going in their pocket. That is illegal. You cannot use campaign money to make it, you can't pay yourself with it. So do not do that. Make sure it is a 501c3 that is completely disconnected to you and your family. Generally give to an issue that you care about. But those are the two main things: refunds or donations to 501c3 charities.
Great. And finally, before we move into how to get started with fundraising, what is a legitimate price that you could pay a campaign manager, and can you pay your campaign manager out of money raised for your campaign for office? As Alex mentioned, staff is definitely a expenditure that you can spend out of. So yes, you can pay for your staff based on your fundraising. By way of what to pay a campaign manager, this really varies based on the type of race that you're in. So I would honestly look for previous postings to compare with. And if Alonso, have a chance to talk with you one-on-one, be happy to go in deeper on this answer. But it varies so much based on the different types of races. But yeah, let's get into how to get started with all of this fundraising. I think we've done a great job at getting some of the basics here, or rather, let's get into the budgeting best practices. Kind of making that plan for what you need to fundraise. How should candidates set a fundraising goal and really get started on that budgeting journey?
So the important thing first is to understand your priorities in spending, right? What are the things I need to win? What are the basic things I need? And it's, I'm reiterating it from before. Your website, where your money's going to be coming through, is number one. You want to have a website. You want people to be able to Google you, find out information about you. Number two is of course, the walk cards, having something you can hand to voters to remind them of who you are. Um, they can see your name. Political scientists have done studies. Basically, a candidate needs to see your name, or a voter needs to see your name about 7 times before they remember it. So having that walk card, especially if you can get one that can be used for mail in the future, making sure that it's designed in a way that it can be used both, is really, really important. Staff, data, mail, swag, t-shirts, stickers, etc. In my first race, I didn't have t-shirts. We only had stickers. And, people would come out, volunteers would go out, just slap stickers on their t-shirts. Wear a plain white t-shirt, put a sticker on there. It's a very good way to raise visibility and save money. And then, of course, events, campaign events, tabling, fundraising, etc. So prioritizing those things. These are the things that we know will help you win your election, because these are all related to direct voter contact. And that is really the most important thing when you're thinking of how can I win? It is, how am I directly engaging voters? What am I doing to directly engage voters? Walk card, you're putting it in their hands. Staff is talking to voters. The data is to figure out which voters are you talking to. You're mailing voters. Your websites for voters to find information about you and give you money. So connecting it to voters. And then events, tabling at public events, campaign events, maybe marching in a parade, etc. Put those things in there as you're building your budget. But again, prioritize, be smart, and set those goals based on what the cost that you know what your website's going to cost. You can talk to vendors about walk cards. Staff, we just discussed, it varies, size of your race. But talk to vendors, figure out what mail would look like, how much would t-shirts cost, stickers, etc. And then make a calendar. How many days do you have until the election? And I'll get that into the next one. But it's really important when you make a calendar, what are the events that I'm going to have to participate in, right? Is there a 4th of July parade that I need to table at? Is there a huge community event where everybody in the neighborhood comes out and candidates table at? Like, make sure that's put in your budget as well. And money is theoretically set aside for that. Registration fee, entry fee, etc.
Great. And what are some of the key components of a good campaign budget?
So, the key components, it's like I said, it's the website, the staff, and the swag, the mail, the walk cards, just all the elements that you need to succeed and to engage your voters directly.
And what tips do you have for tracking expenses and ensuring financial transparency throughout the process?
Oh boy. Tracking expenses. So that, depending on your expenses, is where treasurer or campaign manager comes really, really, really handy. But number one, keep your expenses. The biggest tip for me, keep your expenses big and minimal. And what I mean by that is, when you're ordering your walk cards, you want to order one bulk order as much as you can, 10,000, 15,000, however many you think you're going to need all at once. So it's a single expense. You don't want to end up having to order 1,000 every week for 6 weeks, because you have to report every single expense. So make sure that you're keeping it as simple as possible there. With your website, get it on a recurring thing. So, you're billed $10, $15, $20 a month, whatever your service provider, whatever your host charges you. And then it's just automatically, you can just copy and paste it every expense reporting period. Same thing with swag. With staff, hopefully you have the same staffer. Hopefully, they're paid not hourly, but salary. So again, you're keeping it simple, right? Whatever the salary is for the month, periodically, you just want to keep those expenses as simple as possible. using a spreadsheet, and then also checking periodically every day, every 2 days. But if you're spending a lot of money, if you have a lot, not so much spending a lot of money, if you have a lot of small expenses, that does raise red flags with the Secretary of State, right? If you are going to a lot of meals every day, coffees, lunches, if you have a lot of small expenses, they will start to get worried because there will be the question of how is this connected to direct voter contact? How is this connected to actual campaign related activities? And so you want to keep the best thing to do, plan out your expenses as much as possible and keep them small, you know.
Awesome. Well, let's get into actually getting started with fundraising. How should candidates go about setting daily fundraising goals or overall fundraising goals based on that budget that you just walked through?
Yeah. So once you've made your budget, right? Once you've talked and figured out how much your mail is going to cost, what your dad's going to cost, your website's going to cost over the period of your election, right? And what your goal is, right? Because you also want to have a little bit of a cushion, right? So you want to have some money. So here I used an example of $30,000, right? Divide that by the number of days left in the campaign, right? So now we're looking at how many days till the presidential election, or till November rather, not presidential, but November 5th is 100 days roughly. So you want to set your goal, and here I use 60 days left. The reporting deadline, and know this, you have a fundraising deadline that is not election day. The fundraising and reporting deadline is always before election day. In most jurisdictions, it's the Friday before election day. Some places it'll be the Monday before election day. So the last day you can fundraise, how many days from today is that? And divide that by your budget. So you can set a daily goal. So I used here, for example, $30,000. Say I want to raise $30,000. I have 60 days left. I need to raise $500 a day. And so as a candidate, you want to be calling to try to raise that money, to try to raise $500 a day. And if you do have a great phone conversation with somebody in this example, and they're like, yes, I'm going to give you $500. And I know local jurisdictions, it's lower. Here in DC, I live in DC, it's $250 max. Some places it'll be $100 max. Florida's $1,000. Some places like Virginia have no individual donation limit. Even if you hit that goal with your first phone call, you want to keep going because now you have some emotional momentum and some psychological momentum. So keep going. And raise that money because you want to have a cushion, right? A cushion of a little bit of money. And you also want to have a cushion for your daily goal for the days that you fall short. And to begin, the first thing you have to do, even before you run, is make a list of your personal network. Now, we're going to be focused, this whole conversation is going to be focused on personal network donating. And I'll go over establishment donors in a second, but personal networks, these are the people that know you and believe in you. They're the people you went to college and grad school with, your coworkers, your neighbors, your personal friends, people who you feel would want to invest in you, right? People who know you, people who believe in you. Their contribution is really a gift to you. It is a gift. It is something that they are giving to you. Those donors, the ones that know you and believe in you, especially when you're starting out, those are the ones that are going to build the foundation for you to grow as a candidate. As you move in your career, get elected, get reelected, that will change. Your network will change. It will grow. And you won't need to rely so much on your personal connections. But in the beginning, you've really got to leverage these connections as much as possible. And we'll get into more detail in a second. But before we do, just want to make a note on what establishment donors are and why I differentiate it. There's personal donors, personal network donors, and establishment donors. Establishment donors are special interests. Some are good, some are bad. There are labor unions. There are developers, your chambers of commerce, your corporate PACs, small businesses, if your state and jurisdiction allows for corporate donors. And then, of course, there are people who hate your opponent because of their record, which an example from Florida that I always use is Disney. Disney is the #1 donor to the Florida Republican Party and Florida Republican candidates. It is also the #1 donor in Florida to Democratic candidates and the Democratic Party. And their focus is really on going after people they don't like. Disney's the #1 issue that they are really, really up about is an expansion of gambling. They are strictly opposed to an expansion of gambling. They see it as competition. And so anyone who is pro-gambling in Florida is going to feel their wrath, which is complicated because Florida has casinos. And so there are legislators who represent areas with casinos. And there's a real conflict there and a real struggle that happens. And so when we're talking about special interests, there may be an interest like that in your community that specifically hates your opponent because of a specific issue. And depending on your comfort level, and your feeling about that issue, if you are truly, for example, vigorously against gambling and its expansion from a true moral, philosophical standpoint, then Disney is worth reaching out to as a candidate in Florida in the state legislature if your opponent has been on the other side of that issue. But of course, you're running in a place with casinos that wouldn't necessarily work. So it's really, really tricky and it's really situational and contingent on specific circumstances. And so that's why for this, we're really focused on personal network donors. We'll get into more detail now on sort of the mechanics of asking your friends and family and your people who are your acquaintances for money.
Yeah. So you've got your list, you've got the sort of folks that you want to go to. Making an ask, especially a fundraising ask, I think is one of the most dreaded parts of running for office. But what can a candidate do to prepare for this? What are your tips for writing a winning fundraising script?
Yeah. So, and that's the next slide. But even before you get there, I just want to make sure, when you're building your spreadsheet, include the personal info, name, number, mailing address, email, their employer and job title. This is usually required for reporting purposes. The date that you call, how much money you want to ask them for, have they donated to other candidates or you in the past? If they've given, $50 to, Bernie Sanders, do you think that they would give $50 to you or would they give more, right? And that's one column. The column next to it is the actual pledge. How much do they actually pledge to give to you? Because sometimes they will negotiate you down, right? They'll call you and say, "Hey, I need 100." You'll say, I'd like $100." And they'll say, "Well, I can't do that, but I can do 25 right now." So the actual pledge, what do they agree to give? Always take a yes. And we'll get to this later. Accept your no's, accept your yeses. And then, of course, follow-up information should also be a column, right? Date you followed up, date they donated, if they've donated, date that a thank you went out, etc. And here's the script. It's a very basic script. I pulled it from numerous candidate trainings I've done. Did an Emily's List training, Progressive Change Campaign Committee training. And this is essentially what they all come down to is a very basic script. First, you're opening, right? Ask for the person on your list, especially if you're calling an employer. I mean, use your cell phone, you're calling your friend. So you can just call them. You want to introduce yourself and what you're running for, but dispatch the pleasantries of small talk as quickly as possible without rushing. You want to keep it natural but flowing. Hey, how's it going? What are you up to? Etc. 1 minute. Don't talk as much about yourself because you're going to be talking about why you're running. Just listen to them on how they're doing, right? How are their kids doing? Whatever. Like, how do you know them, right? Is it someone who, both of your children go to school together and you've talked to them about school issues, you've seen them around the PTA, they care about politics, they're going to vote in this city commission race. Ask them about their kid, So then you transition, right? After the small talk, transition. And here's 2 examples. Hey, Bob, I need to talk to you about something important. Lisa, I need your help. Lisa, this is why. Look, Lisa, I'm calling because I need your help. Remind them. And from there, the transition, as soon as you say that, it flows right into the connection, right? So, Lisa, I need your help. You've known me forever, and you know how much I care about our education system in our state. And that's why I'm running for school board. You know, they will probably be aware that you're running for the most part. So you're doing the transition and connection together in one sentence. And I would recommend writing this out, have it in front of you on a Word doc. Just don't be afraid to read it. You don't want to sound mechanical and robotic, but have it right there in front of you so you don't have to think about it. So remind them of that connection and let them know the stakes, right? You know how much I care about this system. And so I'm using education, and now, the stakes, right? So in this education example, um, you know, high school graduation rates are abysmal. We've seen it amongst our own friends and families, and I'm running. But I need your help. I need your help to win, right? So you're talking about the stakes, and with the stakes, you're bringing up a specific issue, right? You're saying, so just to go through it real quick, Lisa, I need your help. You've known me forever. You know how much I care about this issue. Right now, this issue is out of control, and I need your help. I need your help. I'm asking you for $100. And just know that your $100 donation, be specific with your need as much as possible. Your $100 donation today will get me the 25 yard signs that I need for election polling places. Your $500 donation will get me the 2,000 walking cards I need. Is there a specific need that you can address, right? That is tangible, right? And it's not necessarily connected, right? Like you're not actually going to use this money for that specific thing generally, because all the money is going into one big pot. And then that pot, some of it's going to go to the website, some of it's going to go to the yard sign, some of it's going to go to staff. But the money, be honest about the money, right? Like specifically, your budget. If you need $2,000 for walk cards, you're asking them for a part of that $2,000. Your $500 donation is going to help me get those 2,000 walk cards. So
So
can I
Alex,
count on you today?
if I responded to that and I said, Alex, I'm a big fan. I want you to win. I agree that this is a big issue. But that's a lot of money for me right now. What would you do to sort of push back on that? What is the best respectful way for a candidate to handle objections to a first fundraising ask? I think that's one of the hardest lines to walk, and probably one of the things that is most daunting to a first-time candidate.
Absolutely. And I would immediately cut the request in half, be very respectful, understanding. Well, first, like, man, I'm sorry, I totally understand. Is there any way you can do $25? Let's say you ask them for 50. Can you do $25? And when you make the ask for the specific amount, be quiet. The first person to speak loses. That is fundraising 101. So make the ask and cut it down to half. And if they're still like, look, I got some trouble, then I would pivot to, well, look, there's this many days left in the election. Can we check back in a few weeks and give you a call back? Can we see how things are going? Your support matters to me. If anything changes for you, in the next few weeks, like, do you think I can, we can talk again in a few weeks. Be very respectful, kind, because you don't want to lose the relationship, right? You don't want to lose the relationship, and you don't want to lose the opportunity for support down the line. And you also don't know who they might know, right? So ask them if you can follow up and move on to the next person, right? All right, so I just jumped to after the call, but so letting them know, give that second ask, but respect their no, respect their situation. Ask them if you can circle back with them. They're generally going to say yes, unless they actually don't want you to win, which is fine. It is what it is.
This
They'll generally say yes and then circle back.
This also brings up a good point about targeting for that first ask in general. There's an old, and this maybe dates me a little bit, but there's an old song by De La Soul where they say, if you want 5 cents, don't ask for 3, ask for 10. Right. And I've always applied that to my fundraising targeting. If you ask for just a number that's just a little bit out of reach in the first place, it makes that fallback position a little more palpable, which is always a good direction to sort of work into your fundraising piece. I want to move us along because I'm cognizant of the time. So let's talk about what to do after a call and what a candidate can do to confirm a donor, as well as to thank them. You know, thanking someone who's willing to make that commitment to your campaign is so important for continuing the relationship and also hopefully growing it as time goes on.
Absolutely. Your reminder of them, their pledge is your thank you. So make sure to confirm their email address on the call. Even if you know it, you have it, you email all the time. Confirm, hey, bob@google.com. Just want to confirm. Okay. Prepare a template that basically lays out everything, but personalize it, right? Shouldn't just be like, dear voter. It should be, dear Bob, thank you for your pledge of $50. It's going to help me go a long way. I really appreciate it. Here's the donation link. Send it to them immediately, right? Don't make your next call. Put your phone down and don't make your next call until that email is done. And let them know, I'm going to be emailing you this donation link. Send it to them. Prepare a hard copy letter. Thanking them for their pledge. Make sure it's bolded dollar amounts and send a copy of that every 2 weeks. If you can do it, you know, no postage. Maybe it's every 3 weeks if it needs to be. But what you'd like to do ideally is thank them for their pledge with a hard copy letter. And this is a bit of an aggressive ask, but I do think it's important to be aggressive a little bit, especially as you're running a grassroots campaign. A hard copy letter thanking them for their pledge, with, again, your email address is in there, and it doesn't have to be anything complicated. A couple paragraphs, you know, and again, it's a template. The first paragraph, first few sentences personalized to them, who they are and their pledge. Then it's about your campaign. Thank you again for your donation. Remember to donate at, alexbarrio.com. And then in 2 weeks, if they haven't donated, that's why your spreadsheet is so important. Your campaign manager, if you have a treasurer, they're on top of it. You're able to send another one 2 weeks later. Same thing with email. So you send that thank you email. A week later, they haven't donated, you send the hard copy letter. A week later, you send a reminder email. And then a week later, another copy of the hard copy letter. So every 7 days, they're getting in touch and they're being reminded like, hey, I pledged to donate. And it seems I know there's a part of it inside of us that are like, well, that seems really annoying. But you have to let that go. Embrace that they want to donate, right? They said they were going to donate. They want to help you. And life gets in the way, People forget to check their email. They don't check their mail that often. So to send something that is very gracious, that is very grateful, and remind them, thank you so much. Oh my God, you're making a huge difference with your contribution. You're thanking them for their support. And then, of course, after they donate, one final, thank you so much for donating. Looking forward to working with you after I win. And remember, respect the no. Like, it sucks if a donor changes their mind and they come back to you after a few weeks and say, look, I'm not going to be able to do this at this time. Okay, circle back with them later. They may come around to donate later anyway. I've had that experience where somebody told me no, and then at the end of the election, they decided to donate anyway. Just respect the no and let it go. Keep moving forward.
Great. So let's pivot into talking about tools and resources. There are a lot of different tools out there, a lot of different resources out there. What do you think of as some of the most important platforms that are available for managing campaign finances?
Yeah. So depending on the scale of your campaign, my default is always the simplest is the best, especially if you're a first-time candidate. The first time I ran, I used PayPal and Square. It is, or maybe it was just PayPal and I had those little swiper things on your phone. You would just swipe on it. The simplest is best because you want to, and I literally had a conversation about this the other day. This woman was asking me specifically about this candidate, and she already uses PayPal for work. She's very familiar with the way that it works, and their transaction fees are unreasonable. But simplicity is best, especially when if you're running in late, if you don't have a lot of time for your campaign and you just need to get that money in. Um, so, and if you're unfamiliar with any systems and you do have times, you want to make sure that it's easy for donors to use to donate. So again, you want to test it yourself. Make sure that it captures the exact information you need for your reports, right? That all those boxes are there, name, address, employer, etc. And that it's an online platform that people can use both on their phone and on a browser. So if they open it on a laptop, it's easy. If they open it on their phone, it's easy. The partisan examples of Act Blue and WinRed, sorry, they're WinRed. They're both really, really simple and good to use as examples of what you're looking for. So you want something like that, and both Act Blue and WinRed, they only work. Act Blue is only Democrats, WinRed's only Republicans. They have a whole verification process. So you can't use those for our purposes, but they have a very good layout that's exactly the sort of layout that you're looking for this. There are a couple of nonprofit organization or tools, CRMs that you can use. There's AI-powered tools, Keela and Gravity. And then there's some nonprofit CRMs, Bloomerang and Raise Donors are examples. They're good examples to look at. And if there's an interface that you like, that is simple, that connects quickly with your website and easily, just go for it. But you don't want to overthink it. You don't want to spend too much time on this. Like, it's ultimately not that important. It only becomes important when it doesn't suit your purposes, right? Because then it's an annoying thing. As long as it suits the purposes, which is easy for donors to use and easy for you to get the information you need for reporting purposes and easy for you to get the cash, that is what matters when it comes to CRMs.
Excellent. I want to go ahead and pivot into Q&A for about 15 minutes or so. And Alex, if you can pull down the slideshow, that'd be great. So we covered a lot of information over the course of this call, and I think fundraising is oftentimes the most sort of confusing aspect of running for office, in large part as it's come up in this call, because there are different restrictions and rules for each office and different restrictions and rules based on all the different jurisdictions. So I want to hold out a little bit of extra time for questions as we kind of wrap up this call. I'm looking in the chat here and I see I'm running for mayor and was told to be careful of developers and their contributions. Do you have a reaction to that, Alex?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're accepting donations from anybody, whether it's an individual or a corporation, you want to be cognizant of backlash, right? You want to be aware of potential negativity, anything that can be used against you. And so the fact is, especially for everybody who's running for local office, knows developers are very unpopular. Developers are not necessarily the people you want to be associated with because they're very easy to demagogue against, right? They're very easy for your opponent to be like, look, this is somebody who's bought and sold by the developers. They're going to mow over our parks and build golf courses and whatever the issue is locally. So you just want to be aware of that. And as local government, I've seen it all over the country. Developers do get a bad rap. And it's like anything, right? Not all developers are the same. But you don't want to end up in a situation where you're constantly trying to defend your donors. But that's a balance of, are you getting enough support financially to where you feel good about it ethically? That you're not afraid of defending it? Because that's also really, really important. What is the ethical concern, right? And if a developer is donating to you, and here's the real issue, why this is such a problem, developers and local government. Voters instinctively feel there's a quid pro quo. A developer is giving you money because you told them that you were going to approve a project. And so if you're accepting money from anybody, always make clear to them, you're buying into me as a candidate and you are buying into my vision. I am not buying into your vision. I am not buying into you as a developer. Okay? Hold fast to your principles and your values and make sure that's very clear to them, because you don't want them to get the wrong idea. And as long as they don't have the wrong idea, the voters aren't going to have the wrong idea. And you can go to the voters and say, look, it doesn't matter. Harry Reid he was criticized for taking certain corporate donations back in the day, and that was his argument, and he was right. Look, they're buying into me, you know? Health insurance companies are giving me money, but I'm still pushing for the Affordable Care Act, right? I'm still trying to make it harder for them to make as much profit as they're making right now. Um, so yeah, anybody who's donating to you is buying into you. They're buying into what you believe and what you're going to do. And they need to know that. And if they don't want to give you money after you make that clear to them, good. You don't want their money anyway.
So another couple of great questions in here. How can candidates find out what are considered permissible expenses? I saw comments earlier asking about spending money on specific things like Facebook ads. And Facebook ads almost always fall under the bucket of digital advertisement and would be a method of order contact. The tricky thing with any ad that you're placing, whether it's on TV or the radio or on Facebook, is they oftentimes have disclosures and specific language requirements that you need to follow. Here in my home state of Maine, we require you to disclose your top 3 donors at the end of all ads, right? So as always, important to check around how to execute those and stay in compliance, but you certainly, any of those voter contact forms are acceptable. But Alex, to the point of where can you double check, is this permissible or not, or get a full list of permissible expenses? I know it's come up a lot. The Secretary of State's page, ethics commissions, if your state has one, local clerk's offices, anywhere else that you want to add to that list?
Any expenditure reports are really, really crucial. And when you're talking about companies like Facebook, when you're talking about television ads, potentially digital ads, media, they have experts in sales who will talk to you about what is permissible, what is not, what language is required, what is not. Their salespeople should know exactly what is needed. And that's been my experience in Florida, working and specifically actually getting Facebook ads. Like, I knew from the get-go, both from the Secretary of State's candidate guidebook, what I could spend on and what disclaimers needed to be included in every ad. And that was doubly confirmed when I purchased those ads, right, on Facebook and on social media. And so look at also expenditure reports in similar races, right? Similar candidates, other people running for city council, mayor, et cetera. What did they spend their money on? And if you don't know, if there's something that's questionable or something that's sort of in a weird gray zone, ask. Just ask them, and they will tell you one way or another.
Joe adds here, in their experience, the Public Disclosure Commission, which is the regulatory agency in Washington for campaign finance, has been really positive. It's not the case in every state, but they were encouraged to reach out with any questions, and have always been met with prompt and clear explanations for anything that they wanted to know, which is great to hear. I live in a state where we have both a really wonderful ethics office and a Secretary of State's office who I've gone to and probably bothered more than anyone else in the state with questions. And that's they're civil servants. It's what they're there for. Andre asks, do candidates or campaigns have responsibilities to report or control individual spending from members of the public? Like, for instance, if I make a flyer available on my website to print and members of the public choose to print them themselves, do I need to label them as paid for by the X campaign? Do I need to chase those down and have them reported as in-kind contributions?
So there's a bunch of questions here that I'll run through. Number one, do candidates and campaigns have any responsibility to control or report individual spending from members of the public? No, you do not have that responsibility generally. There may be certain exemptions or certain exceptions based on what exactly those people are spending money on. Is it connected to helping you? For example, if they spend money on tabling at an event for you, like let's say there's a community picnic and they get a table and it's a table for your campaign, then yes, you have to report that because that's a direct expense benefiting you and a campaign expenditure, right? And that would even count against their donation limit potentially. So it's really, be mindful. It's very situational. And if there's any question, reach out to your regulatory agency who you're reporting your donations to and ask them. If you make a flyer available to print on your website, do you need to include a disclaimer? You need to include a disclaimer on every page on your website. You need to include a disclaimer on everything. You don't legally have to put disclaimers on t-shirts. I put disclaimers on t-shirts because I put disclaimers on everything. It should be embedded in the actual graphic itself, because it is more important. I think it's better and more important to be overly cautious than undercautious on this. You don't want to get in trouble because you failed to put a disclaimer on a sticker, for example, and then all of a sudden you got to run around town taking off all these bumper stickers off people's cars because every bumper sticker out there is a violation because it doesn't have a disclaimer. So just throw a disclaimer on there. If you have anything on your website, every single page of your website, every single doc on your website should have a disclaimer. Um, and and then chasing them down, like I said, it really depends on the actual specifics. So yeah, I want to jump to Melissa because she's had her hand raised for a bit. Melissa?
Hi, I'm running for city council in my town, American Canyon. We're part of Napa Valley. And it's big here to have QR codes. And like I plan to sit out in front of businesses that will let me and just engage people as they come in and out. And do you think that's a good idea to have a QR code linked to my account to raise money?
Absolutely. QR codes are great. It's a QR code basically functions as a donation link, right? They scan it and it goes automatically to the website, just like clicking on a link. Just like clicking on a link. So I would highly recommend using them if you can get them, for sure. It just simplifies anything. Everything that you can do to simplify your supporters finding ways to help you, whether it's through financial contributions or through volunteering, absolutely embrace it. And QR codes are a good thing, and I've used them before previously. I want to jump to Kobe's question, and then I'll call on Gretchen. Kobe asked, would you recommend TV ads in an Oregon State Senate race? The opposition's running TV ads, and they have a very large budget. Again, I would look at the budget with any ads. Advertising is expensive. So what is the impact, right? For me, TV ads are at the bottom. Number one, most people don't watch commercials. Commercials are mostly only watched during live sports. And live sports ads, that's why they're so expensive, because that's when people watch commercials. They don't really watch them at home. So many people watch TV on streaming. I have Hulu without ads. Most people have similar programs with their streaming services. So it really depends on your budget. It's a want to have versus a need to have. Most people are not going to be watching those ads. Like, they're going to be sent out to the universe. Direct voter contact in the form of in-person voter engagement, in the form of text messages, in the form of phone calls, in the form of knocking on doors is far more effective than television ads. A state senator who puts a commercial on is not going to be remembered at all relative to someone that you talk to. When you talk to a voter, they're not going to be swayed by a commercial. Assuming that they're positive, right? Like, assuming you're at the door giving your positive reason why they should vote for you, and the state senator's on TV giving his positive reason why people should vote for him, the voters are going to remember you at the door. They're not going to remember the TV ad. So it is at the bottom for me in terms of spending. Digital ads are different because people do see them regularly on social media. They just pop up. I mean, Instagram's working on a program to where you can't skip ads now. So, you're not going to be able to avoid them on social media as much. So that stuff works. Ads in newspapers work, especially on news websites, your local paper's website. Those are much more better use of your finances. But if you're raining money and you're raking it in and you have a big budget, TV ads are nice little icing on the cake, but they shouldn't be the cake itself. Gretchen?
Thanks, Alex. I have a follow-up question to Melissa's question about QR codes. Um, what about for older audiences? Would it make sense to have a QR code in addition to like the name of my website spelled out or the name of my Facebook account spelled out? I'm just worried about some of the older demographic in the neighborhood that I live in, might not know how to use QR codes, or they might not be comfortable using QR codes.
Absolutely. You want to have it all. You want to do it all. And this is one of those things where having it all is not a gigantic expense. So you want to have a link. The QR code is good for in-person donations. That is where it is key. It's key for fundraisers. Melissa was saying meeting with business people, people on the street. That's when the QR code makes the big difference because it's a very quick and easy way for them to donate. The link is for when you're phoning. You don't want to email a QR code to somebody. You want to email them the link to the donation page on your website after you're done phone banking, after you're done calling them and asking them for a donation. That is much simpler, especially when someone's at home or on their computer. So have both and use your discretion depending on the situation, etc. Joe Zichterman? Yes.
Hey, I just wanted to provide an example, if I could, of business cards that I've made just to hopefully give people some ideas. So I have my campaign logo. I've got my name and the race I'm running for over here. I've got my website on the right side with a phone number and email address. And then on the back, I have a QR code with a Linktree link. That takes you to, so Linktree is a free service that allows you to put multiple links in like a mobile friendly view. That link takes you to a page that is mostly optimized for phones because that's where people are going to be scanning QR codes. And that has a donate link at the top and then a link to links rather to a couple of videos that I'm pointing people towards. Frankly, the QR code thing it was kind of said to me as like, oh, you should have it. From what I can tell from analytics, there aren't a ton of people who actually like scan these codes. You want to have them, I think, so that they're available for people who want them. But I think like Alex, you're pointing out, like there are so many different ways that people can engage with it. You kind of, I think, just want to make it available. But anyways, yeah, so these are printed through Vistaprint. I ordered a box I used Vistaprint's native design tool to make these. Linktree provided the QR code for free. I paid somewhere north of $25 for, I think, 100 of these cards, and the price goes down per card when you buy more. So 250, 500 they offer as well. Pretty straightforward. Just wanted to give that example.
Great. Gretchen, yeah, you have a follow-up and then I'll send it back to Rob.
Well, if we're doing show and tell, can I do show and tell too and I used Vistaprint as well. And I think I'm looking at for rat cards, stickers, and business cards, I spent like $175 on rat cards, 63 on stickers, and like $48. And so I did like my picture and my name big and then what I'm running for. And then on the back, I did the QR code with my phone number, email, website. And then I did my key priorities as well,
Great.
just so people could kind of, and then in the teeny tiny print is the prepared and paid for. But again, yeah, Vistaprint is amazing. Just for the cost of getting some of the stuff. And I'm working on some other campaign material because I did my rat card. Now I'm going to co-campaign with my incumbent for I'm running for city council. But yeah, I've gotten a lot of great feedback on having a picture so people will recognize me when I'm out and about at community events. And then the priorities too. So if people have any questions, but the QR code goes to my website, which has a link to my Facebook. And I've just been getting started handing out my lit. But I've been pretty active more on Facebook, and I just created a really simple website.
Great.
Yeah,
Rob,
those are wonderful cards, both of you. And Gretchen, love the image of you on there as well, and having your actual main policy points is a great idea on there. I want to key up a question for Alex. One of my favorite tactics early in a campaign related to fundraising is house parties. And throughout a campaign, having house parties. We didn't really talk about it in the presentation, but can you kind of talk about the house party strategy and why it's such an effective way to tap into that sort of personal network, especially?
Yeah, so a house party is an event that is hosted by a supporter, right, in your district. And it's an opportunity for them to invite their neighbors to come and meet you, right? That's the basic level. You're inviting, your host, this person in a neighborhood that you don't live in, right? And the other side of town or the other side of the county is hosting an event, and they'll invite their neighbors to come and meet and greet with you. It's a really, really good opportunity, one, to talk to voters. Everyone in there is engaged in this election, right? They're coming because they want to know more about you. There's a level of trust that is already established and a level of credibility that you are bringing, or that already exists because of the host, right? So the people are there because the host has invited them and they trust the host. So it's a very, very good way to capture voters, to have a good social event, and then also to ask for small donations. You have one or two volunteers there. You can print out your QR codes with the website links, have them laying around the house on clipboards. You can collect cash donations if you have donation envelopes. But there's just an excellent opportunity to have a very, very good, thoughtful conversation with your voters in a very casual atmosphere as well, right? There's no press at the house party, right? It's just you and the voters. You can be candid, you can be open about your candidacy, about why you're running, the issues that motivate you, and build a deep connection with voters, and ideally connect with someone who maybe lives in the next neighborhood that can then host a house party for their neighbors, and you can keep it going, right? And it grows and becomes organic, and you can start having multiple house parties throughout the district, each one of which you're raising a little bit of money, you're raising awareness, you're raising name recognition. Because remember, every single one of us has been asked by people, who should I vote for? Right? Especially in these local races. And so meeting people at these sorts of events, those are all people who are asked by their family members and their neighbors, who do you think I should vote for? And so you want your name with those people. So it's just a good opportunity to connect and really build a substantive personal connection with them that will last, get your votes, and raise your money.
Cruz Mora asks, as a 25-year-old candidate running for city council, I know that our community's average voter is 61 and a half years old. What strategies can I use to effectively fundraise and generate funds from older voters while maintaining my authenticity and vision for our city?
It's a very tough question. So I try to think of the question more as like taking a step back of the campaign. What are the issues that your voters care about, regardless of age, right? And then what are the issues this community cares about? And how are you, as the candidate, going to address those issues? How are you, as the candidate, going to lead on those issues? So going first, you want to make sure that there's a message that resonates with them, that they listen to, that they believe in, and they can buy into. Youth is not a huge detriment, right? Older voters love voting for younger people. They love the idea. I've seen it so many times of this idea of voting for their child or their grandchild. Like, older voters really want to know, and I think everyone generally, we all want to know the future's in good hands. And so a lot of it is just about the way you present yourself and the issues, and you're speaking to the issues that matter to them in your community. So is it more public transit? Is it safer communities? What is it that you're doing? How are you speaking to them in a way that resonates with them? How is your message going to echo with them? And then the money will come. If they believe in you, then they'll believe enough to donate you. But you really got to just make sure they believe in you and you're addressing their concerns.
Melissa, I see your hand up.
Okay, so I don't like to be a snitch, but I feel like I need to be a snitch on this situation. So we're a small town and we have this thing called Meet Me in the Streets. It happens once in June, July, and August, where the community comes together. But our city rules specifically say that you cannot campaign at any city event. So one of my competitors was out there hustling his signs and this and that. And then there was other candidates out there that were not doing it. So, I mean, would it be beneficial for me to snitch on that person? How does everyone feel about that? I'd like to eliminate everyone I can, but
You don't, I mean, and I don't know if Rob, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well, but in my experience, you as the candidate don't want to snitch. You don't want to be the one, your spouse, your campaign manager, whatever, nobody who's directly paid by the campaign should be the snitch. I do think if there are supporters in your community, and I'll leave it at this, if there are other supporters in your community or other candidates who are concerned about this candidate's behavior during a city event and they want to talk about it and they want to complain about it, I would not tell you to discourage them. But that is not your business and your focus as a candidate. Your focus is on getting your message out there in a positive way so that you can win. And if other people are frustrated by people doing things that are, not necessarily illegal, but against the spirit of the community event, then they should be free to do so. But don't let that distract you from your mission of talking to all the voters and making sure they know you and they vote for you. Rob?
perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, I love that answer. I want to go ahead and begin to wrap up the call here. And I'm going to try to take some of Alex's best advice about making an ask and actually ask all of you to do something that will help goodparty.org and hopefully also help you guys as well. I'm dropping in the chat here a link that I'd love to ask each of you to click while we're here on the call. And this is, we're running currently, and you guys did some show and tell. I'll do some show and tell. We're running a little bit of a campaign. We have our goodparty.org stickers here that also have a QR code on the back. And we're asking all of our supporters, I see some folks who have already done this and already have them. We're asking everyone, if you don't have these already, to fill out the form here, and we'll send you a packet of our stickers. There's one that you can slap on your laptop or a water bottle, but we're also asking, can you give the other 4 to people that similar to the way that fundraising kind of grows outward from people. We want to remind people that a majority of Americans are independents and that independents are a sort of overlooked majority in this country. And if we all banded together, we'd be getting some very different electoral outcomes and probably a better country for it. So we are calling it the Brighten America campaign because of our red, bright, and blue stickers. So that's my ask. This is a really important time to do it. I'm glad to see people already holding up stickers who have participated in this. I also want to invite you all to mark your calendars. In 2 weeks. Our next training will be with our colleague Jared, and it is on digital dominance, mastering campaigning and engagement online. It's all focused on digital organizing, which again has been highly requested from folks in our candidate channel on Discord. And then the final ask is, if you're not already in our Discord, in our candidate community, to please join that. We have a lot of fun there. It is an opportunity to have direct access to people like Alex, like Jared, like myself, pretty much around the clock. If you tag us and ask us a question there, we'll try to get you an answer as soon as possible. Oftentimes, other candidates beat us to it and give you, some pretty sound advice, and we'll weigh in and say, hey, I agree or I disagree every once in a while. But really hoping that folks will join the Discord, select some of these stickers. But thank you guys. As always, these are usually the highlight of my month, getting to do these twice a month with all of you. And to hear about what's working, what's not working. And we look forward to keep doing these all the way through until November. So thank you all.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Thank
Good
you.
luck. Happy fundraising.
Thank you so much.